I think just a real plea to all of us and to myself as well is to go and seek out opportunities, to build relationships, to go and speak to someone who's from a different culture to you, to reach out to someone who's had a different experience of life to you and be prepared to learn. We need to be good listeners. We need to listen to stories. We need to listen to context because that will aid our understanding of what people have gone through.
Hello and welcome to the Love the Stranger podcast. My name is Samuel Luak and I'm hosting this episode on behalf of Welcome Churches. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by James Lynch, the new CEO of Welcome Churches. James took up his role in June. We will hear from him as he shares his personal journey, his vision for the future, and the important ways Welcome Churches is supporting churches to welcome, integrate, and disciple refugees and those seeking asylum across the UK. We will also share some of the challenges and opportunities ahead and the important role churches and faith communities play in transforming life towards a brighter future. James, thank you so much for joining today and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate you giving me the time to join you.
Looking forward to hear from you. So just to begin, if you would like to share about yourself, who you are, your journey, and how you started working or empowering refugees.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samuel. So as you said, I started on the 2nd of June, 2025. So been in post just for a matter of months now. And for me, the journey into refugee ministry started a long time ago. We're talking 1992. I was 18 and my friends from the church I was at the time, and I suddenly became acutely aware of the plight of thousands of Bosnian refugees at that particular time who were fleeing across the border into Croatia, fleeing ethnic cleansing that was going on back in their home country. And I just felt my heart breaking, really, just to see those desperate refugees running away from everything that was familiar to them and having to seek refuge in a new and a familiar context. So my friends and I just said, what can we do? What's the most practical way we could help and show some form of reaction and response to what we saw as being a really terrible series of events? So what we did was, we're quite naive at the time. We didn't really know much about life, but we had a passion and an interest to do something. So we organised some very simple aid convoys across mainland Europe. We did about 6 trips altogether. We drove some food and other supplies across to the refugee camps around the Zagreb area of Croatia. It came from a genuine place of wanting to help, but actually I learned so much myself through those trips. It was very humbling to observe the servant leadership of the church there in Croatia, also the strategic role of the local church here in the UK, and the way that they could support and resource the ministry to those refugee camps back in Croatia. An incredible example, actually, of a local Baptist church in Croatia who were really committed to all the biblical ideas of loving the stranger and reaching out to those in need. And actually, what I learned maybe more than anything else was the amazing unity that came about through that simple act of service of others. Outside the church, there was conflict, civil war between 3 different nationalities. But within the church, it was remarkable. Croats, Bosnians, and even Serbs were worshipping, enjoying fellowship and serving God together in what was becoming a growing refugee resource project that had started right at the beginning of the war. It was an incredible thing to witness and something that made a deep impression on me then and still stays with me now. The unity that comes about when believers come together and serve the greater need in the name of Christ.
That's a great testimony. As the young man of 18, that seemed to be really a turning point in your life, a situation that was not the same as the situation you were in, and being moved by love of God to just help other people. That's amazing. And I think this is what maybe motivated you to do all the other things that you have done afterwards, everything for you to be able to be who you are today in terms of your mission and your perspective on things. And just to continue with this, so before joining Welcome Churches, it has been since 1992, very long journey, but in between, you have done so many other things. So what other roles, what other things you have done since that time and before joining Welcome Churches?
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. I mean, you're right. That was a very formative time for me, and it sort of taught me a lot of things. And in the years following that, I did have an incredible opportunity to travel a little bit, doing short-term mission trips and experiences, working alongside the local church in lots of different parts of the world. And again, hugely impacted by what I learned from those cultures. It wasn't a one-way street. It wasn't me coming from the West with a church behind me to provide the needs of people in those situations alone. It was a two-way street. There were people and churches and projects and amazing stories of things I experienced, which deeply impacted and shaped me and things I learned from. So I learned right from those early days that you act on a spontaneous prompt to do something to demonstrate God's love to those in need. But whenever you give, there's always that opportunity where God blesses you. The very people you're going to serve become your teachers. And that taught me a huge amount. So one example of that was, having been to Africa, South America, and Asia on these little trips I used to go on, I was a foreigner and a stranger for those few weeks in an unfamiliar context. And I remember how that felt. And anyone that's done any travel will know what that feels like. It's the disempowerment of not knowing the local language, the humiliation of stumbling with making cultural and language mistakes. So I know a little bit about what it feels like to be an outsider in a strange land. And I guess that's, in a similar way, is a bit like the experience of refugees, coming to the UK as well. But I think hospitality was a theme that really hit me hard. I mean, I found myself in Pakistan on a trip that I was there. And in one case, village chief, who is highly respected and a man of great honor in his local context, literally ran across several fields to offer me a simple cup of tea, because that was, for him, was the way that he wanted to express hospitality. And I think that as a Brit, that was challenging for me, because I couldn't see that kind of level of hospitality in my own culture, but I was deeply impressed by what it was for that man to express hospitality in his culture. Similarly, in Zambia, a few years before that, I remember going to a village, arriving quite late at night, and myself and the team I was with were served a most amazing meal by the local villagers. And only the next day did I find out that they'd sacrificed one of the only 2 oxen they had in the village, which was the source of their livelihood for ploughing the crops. They'd sacrificed one of those oxen to make that meal for us. And I just remember being pretty much tearful thinking about that and thinking, my gosh, they've actually... they've actually made a huge sacrifice just for me as a stranger. I've come in as someone they don't know, they're no relationship before, but their generosity and their offer of hospitality came at such a cost to them themselves. And I came back to the UK and tried to reflect on what does that look like in the UK? What sacrifices am I prepared to make to welcome somebody else coming into my context? So I was very, very humbled by that particular experience.
That's really important at this point. Even the biblical principle, the biblical hospitality is done differently. And I think this has put you into a situation in which when you see somebody from other nations coming, you will immediately know what does it mean and also their expectations. And I think you have just taken me to Africa to think about collective society where people express hospitality differently in every culture. And also that was the same journey to me when I came to this part of the world as well. I had to learn so many things in a new way. But on this learning process, what are some of the other testimonies you would like to share about this?
Yeah, I mean, I was really thrilled. In 2005, I just got married, and my wife and I were privileged to go to All Nations Christian College for 2 years. And again, the very experience of being there was about 20 different cultures there, different nationalities represented. About 30% of the students were not from Britain. And that was an incredible learning experience, just to kind of see that blend of different nationalities and different approaches and different styles, and the music and the food. It was just an incredible foretaste of heaven, really. From there, I went back to Birmingham and worked with a mission organisation called Interserve for 15 years, and was involved in leading church outreach and engagement activities in Birmingham, which was, again, a brilliant opportunity for me to see the diversity of a British city like Birmingham and all the different nationalities that live there. It was really, really fantastic. Then more recently, I was the CEO of a wonderful Christian charity called Sandwell Churches Link in a little borough called Sandwell here in the West Midlands. And that was to do with building relationships with local churches and a partnership approach to delivering essential services such as debt advice and food provision according to the needs of the local community. was thrilled to be there as part of a refugee support group who helped Sandwell to become a borough of sanctuary in 2023, which has really kick-started the work of Sandwell and its communities in welcoming refugees and asylum seekers in that area. So I've been really privileged to be part of these awesome organisations. I'm deeply indebted to all that I've learned from the amazing people I've met and worked with over those years. I also feel, incredibly blessed to be joining Welcome Churches at this point in time. And I'm really honoured to be the new CEO. And yeah, Samuel, I'm just delighted and very excited to see where the Lord leads us all in the years ahead.
Really, really encouraging. You mentioned hospitality is expressed differently in every culture, but also every organization has own focus on the mission, let's say the kingdom mission God has given us as a church in this part of the world, as Christian believers as well. So in terms of Welcome Churches now, so what can you tell us about this time of, reflection and discerning God's will, whether this is what God wants me to do? Just tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. It was, I came across Welcome Churches when it was first launched as Welcome Boxes, actually, and heard about this amazing vision that the organisation had to provide a box of gifts and to welcome people arriving in the area. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And there again, I came across Welcome Churches a couple of years ago through my work with the Church Urban Fund. And I just love the vision there of welcoming so-called strangers and foreigners and helping them to become friends and members of the local community and the local church. It's a really beautiful vision, and it's one that resonates very strongly with me in my own passions to see those on the margins included and welcomed. And I think it genuinely echoes the heart of God, and I see it throughout the Bible in many instances where you see the heart of God for people to include and to welcome in and to see people come to form a new community and have a new sense of belonging. It's a wonderful image really of God's love for us all. So yeah, I love the heart of what Welcome Churches does. And I thought at the time, great organisation, wouldn't it be great to work for them one day? And of course, in the fullness of time, the opportunity became available. And I felt really strongly that I should throw my hat into the ring, so to speak, and just see what came from that. And yeah, the rest is history. I was delighted to be appointed to that role. So yeah, it's been a really exciting few months to see what's about and to meet the team and hear more about the work that the organisation does. So I'm very, very, very excited.
It is indeed very exciting also to myself and the team as well. And wonderful to have you part of the team. And of course, when you join a role that you will lead a team, you are expecting to bring vision and leadership, but also it is a learning time. So tell us, what are the things that you are learning? What are the things that you are looking, how things have gone on since you started?
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. I've always had this strong belief that the local church has an incredibly important and strategic role to play in society and in the local community. And I feel delighted and absolutely thrilled to bits when I see that happening in a beautiful way. Similarly, I feel a sense of sadness and loss when I see that not the case, where churches themselves perhaps feel marginalised or disempowered and unable to fulfil that particular role. So I really love the way that Welcome Churches has built up the network of Welcome Churches over the years and just really empowering local churches to seize the opportunity that's there, to get involved in reaching out to people from the refugee community arriving in their neighbourhoods and helping those individuals to integrate and thrive in their new life in the UK. That's something that I've seen a few examples already and are looking to find out more brilliant examples of where that is happening. And those stories will become stories that I tell as I go around visiting churches as well, to encourage and just to show what can happen, what can be when that happens. And I think, there's always the real sadness about these events that happen in our world. You hear about wars and conflict and famines and sorts of unrest, and it's just terrible. And it's something that causes us to kind of lift up our hands in despair, but also lift up our hands in prayer and to really pray for God's intervention in those situations. They are terrible, but we are talking about, a God whose story is one of redemption. And I see some of the stories emerging from the UK church, even in these last few months I've been here, which show the redemption that God can bring about, where churches reach out with genuine love and acceptance and welcome. And those refugees who have often fled horrific circumstances, trauma, wars, some really harrowing journeys as well. But when they arrive here, they can often find a warm welcome and a sense of okay, we've come through all that, but now we're here, and here's our new circle of friends, our new community who are going to reach out to us and be family to us in our new location. So that's just really encouraging to see that. I think it's fair to say God's heart breaks for those people. We hear about these journeys and situations, and the more I hear about those stories, the more my heart breaks too. And I guess I just want to see more hearts breaking for those stories, more people realizing the extent of suffering that's being experienced by those individuals arriving on our shores and just wanting to pour love into those situations.
Yeah, that's a good reflection, especially, when you have been somewhere else in the world and then you come back home to the UK and then you see people coming, it is very easy for you to identify yourself with people when you see them, struggling, people praying for their safety. And it is really wonderful. So in terms of welcome churches, how have you found things in stepping to the role? And what are the things that you are learning joining this international team?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Samuel. And I think my time at All Nations as well, and various multicultural teams that I've been delighted to be part of over the years, I've just loved getting to learn, not always languages, because I struggle a little bit with languages, but even just a few key phrases and a few cultural differences, which just I find so enriching, be that around food or traditions or the way that we celebrate, the way that we do life, what family life looks like. I just find learning about those different situations so fascinating and so enriching. And I think it's fair to say that myself in my own family context and my own community is different. And I've been able to see myself change over the years as I've experienced more cultures. And perhaps there's more diversity in my own family context because of what I've learned and what things have shaped me over the years. Coming into the team at Welcome Churches has been absolutely brilliant, and I love the team there. It's a really special team because of its diversity and because of the depth of experience that's there. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about each of the cultures, be it sort of Hong Kong or Sudan or from Iran and other places, and just really increasing my own knowledge and understanding of those particular cultures is something I'm really looking forward to. But I think the way the team comes together as well, there's a real depth of community in the team. We've all got each other's backs, and it just feels like everyone's trying to help each other out and really pull together. And that's really special to see as well. So that's fantastic.
Very special. That's very special. All this knowledge, all this experience, and it feels like God prepared you for this. And that's why we say God's timing is the best. Now, let's move on to talk about what do you see the church is facing today in managing welcoming? What do you see here as opportunities, but also challenges as you move forward with the team and also with the wider vision of Welcome Churches in the UK?
Thank you, Samuel. As we've already alluded to, it's early days still. It's been a matter of months since I started, but even in that short space of time, there's a few things that sort of strike me that might be true to say in terms of challenges that we face both now and in the future. So I think first and foremost, it's difficult to put an exact figure on it, but we believe there's around about 200,000 refugees currently in the UK. That may be a bit different, but that's sort of around about that figure. Welcome Churches has just over 1,400 churches currently connected to the network, which is fantastic. And that's testament to the team and to Emily when she was in the role I'm in now before, and all that you've all done over the years to build that network. That's fantastic. And the Welcome Church's vision is to see every refugee welcomed by the local church, as we all know. Now, I think that's an awesome vision, and that's one of the reasons I was keen to join the organisation. But it's also a huge challenge. Welcome Churches would love to have connection with more churches, and we'd love to see that network of 1,400 grow in size, maybe double in size eventually over time, because the effectiveness of the organisation will be increased massively. We can have a presence and a connection with more churches. We'd love to see more activities being run across the country in our churches for refugees, and more encouraging stories of radical welcome and generous hospitality coming out from those projects. So there's a huge opportunity there to build on everything that's happened to date and to make it even more effective as a resource for both the local church, but also for refugee communities. Now, is the vision feasible, I suppose, is the question. Well, of course, it's a very bold vision. Well, we're servants of a big God. Can the vision be fully realized? Yes, we believe it can be. By God's grace, it's definitely something that we see God working in. We definitely see it as something that he's put in our hearts, and many churches across the UK in their hearts as well. So let's build on that momentum and let's see this wonderful vision, a wonderful organization become even more effective and further reaching in the future.
That's really a beautiful way to put it, So with God on this journey, we see challenges as opportunities at the same time, So with God, everything is possible. And I really believe that when God is in the details of what is happening, he makes things beautiful in his own time. It's just wonderful to see challenges through God's eye, And the practical part of the challenges, of course, as you mentioned, is also about managing the welcome, especially issues of integration, issues of how to welcome people from diverse cultures, especially if somebody has never been to any other nations or lived in other nations. And then suddenly you have people from all different nations. That's one of the challenges. So how do you see Welcome Churches addressing these opportunities or not the challenges?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a journey, isn't it? And I think with all churches and all communities, we're all on a journey of awareness and becoming more equipped to respond to these kind of situations as they come across us. So Welcome Churches is committed to that journey with churches, no matter what stage the church might be at, whether you've been doing refugee outreach ministry for decades or just for a matter of weeks. And the commitment that I see Welcome Churches having is to connect those churches initially and to provide opportunities for referrals so that refugees arriving can be referred to a welcoming church. But it doesn't stop there. It's also, as you alluded to then, Samuel, the resourcing of those churches, encouraging, equipping, training to enable those churches to reach out even more effectively to each and every refugee in the UK, all 200,000 of them. That's what we're aiming for. And also thinking ahead to those who will be arriving in the future. We don't know who they'll be yet. We'll find out as time moves on, but we want to be ready for that when it happens. And Welcome Churches will be there for the church to provide those resources, both what we've got already in the locker, but also we'll be looking to develop new resources to speak into and to help in new emerging situations in the future. We want to be there right at the cutting edge to provide that help and support and resourcing that the church needs as and when situations occur.
Hi, Samuel here. We hope you are enjoying the Love the Stranger podcast. Every year, thousands of people arrive in the UK with stories of war, persecution, violence, and poverty, hoping for a happy ending. Instead, they often face isolation, hostility, fear, and loneliness. Now, more than ever, a welcome from a local church can make all the difference, changing their story from fear and isolation to one of acceptance and belonging. This is for people like Abbas, who said that his local church in the UK gave him a new family to belong to after his family was killed in his home country. We want every refugee in the UK to receive a warm welcome when they arrive in a new community, and we can do it through the power of the local church. Could you become a story changer today by committing to give regularly to the work of Welcome Churches? Your monthly gift will make a refugee feel welcome all year round throughout the UK. Visit welcomechurches.org/donate. Thank you. Yeah, you put it rightly that in terms of the role Welcome Churches plays is to equip, mobilize, and also encourage churches to be able to come together. Of course, part of this mission, I hear always even individual churches saying that this is bigger than our congregation. It is bigger than one church tradition or denomination. It is all of us. So in terms of partnership, how do you see this growing as you step into the role to come together and put forces together? Everybody is involved.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think going back to what I said earlier about my first experience of refugee ministry back in Croatia, I saw a coming together of different individuals and different churches. It was beautiful to see what could be achieved by a group and a partnership that couldn't be achieved by one particular person or initiative. And I really believe in partnership work. And as I read my Bible, I find lots of examples of God's people working together. And it's collaboration around building the wall in Nehemiah's time, partnership between David and Hiram, and even the early church and the Council of Jerusalem. There was a coming together of ideas and people and resources that actually made things happen. And I think as God's people, we're not designed to work on our own in silos. We're designed to be mutually dependent on each other in a genuine community where each plays its part. And ultimately, we're all dependent on God. I know it's a cliche, but it's true that there's so much more we can do together. as a community of believers and churches than we can do by ourselves. It goes without saying. Even a few weeks ago, I was in Bristol and I saw some brilliant examples there of churches collaborating around refugee resourcing and refugee ministry, which was just beautiful to see. And it was just a really good example of churches working together. But in Welcome Churches, we've got partnerships with Bible Society, Redeeming Our Communities, and several other Christian organisations. And those are really important for us as a Christian organisation, but also the 1,400 or so partner churches. The relationship with them is key to the impact we want to have. We couldn't do it without that number of churches. Each one of those plays its part. And we'll certainly continue to explore the potential for new partnerships in the future as God leads us and as we can find partners who will share our values and share our vision, and we will work together with those people that will be able to contribute to that vision of every refugee welcomed by the local church.
A beautiful way to put it, James. Yeah, that's really important. Together with God, on this journey in welcoming and managing welcome of people from diverse cultures as well. So do you have any stories and example of churches that you have seen embrace the work of welcome churches? Like, how do you see the excitement we have among churches to really work together and all of us really moving forward with God to manage welcoming and do it well?
Yeah, thank you. I think you're absolutely right. These stories are absolutely key because there are some incredible stories out there and we need to hear them and we need to keep telling people about them because they will encourage us to do more because we'll be inspired by what we see happening across the country. So one story for me that I heard just a few weeks ago now really was about a lady who many years ago actually came to the UK having been forced to leave her home country and to seek refuge. And all the trauma that went with that. But shortly after she arrived in the UK, she walked into a local church without knowing anybody in that church or even anything about them. Wonderfully, she was warmly welcomed by that particular church and immediately felt a sense of coming home, a sense of belonging to that and part of it. And 17 years later, she's still attending that church with her family. They're active members of the church, fully integrated into church family, which is in the place they now call home. And that church has become the place where all members of the family feel comfortable, accepted, and where they belong as part of the body of Christ in that place. And it's delightful that particular lady's daughter is now the worship leader in that church. And I think that's brilliant. Stories like that, we want to hear more of them. And I'll be looking for them. And if I find them, I'll be telling everybody about them because they're just deeply inspiring and just make my heart jump when I hear about things like that. So, yeah.
That's really a very encouraging testimony as well. And that's what the church is. So welcoming involves opening a space for somebody and to help them to belong. And I think this is just exactly a wonderful example of opening a space and also helping people to belong, not only to integrate, but to thrive in their new community and being part of that community. So just looking ahead now, and especially in the next coming few years, what are the things that you see Welcome Church looking forward to achieve or to do?
Thank you, Samuel. I'd love to see, as I said earlier, I'd love to see more churches in the UK join the Welcome Network, to be connected, to get the newsletter, to hear what's going on, to be aware of what the wider church is doing and to find their part in that movement of welcoming refugees and asylum seekers in the UK. I'd like to see them becoming more empowered to reach out, more confident in expressing God's welcome for refugees arriving in their communities through the work of Welcome Churches. And with that growth in the network, I'd love to see a greater unity among the churches. I think that's really important. Joining up projects and resources to better meet the needs of communities. It's about what services we're providing and how they're tailored to the needs of any particular group, but particularly for the refugee communities. I'd love to see communities settling well into their new area, the new neighbourhood, finding their place in the local church, worshipping, fellowshipping, serving, joining in with the normal activities of the local church and in the community, not as an outsider, not seen as someone that's different or a stranger or a foreigner anymore, but someone that's become a friend and someone who's become part of the family genuinely, fully accepted and integrated into the community. I think that would be awesome to see that happen, and that's certainly what I will be looking to try and encourage in whenever and wherever I can, to see models of that developing.
This is beautiful. And this is, of course, our prayer, that we would be able to see that God will make it possible. We just need to lean on Him. Now, some of the people who are listening to us right now, are maybe already part of Welcome Churches network, friends of Welcome Churches, people who really love Welcome Churches. So what are the ways that you want them to get involved or support the vision of Welcome Churches? If you would like just to mention something that you think is important for them to hear right now.
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, I think it's important to say thank you to those churches, as you just said, that are part of the network and are doing some amazing things. Thank you for all that you are giving and all that you are doing in your community to make refugees feel welcome. I'm truly inspired by all that you're doing, and just thank you. So please keep going and talk to us about how we can help you in that. But as you said then, if you're not part of that network already, or perhaps you're looking at joining or you're interested, again, talk to us, contact myself or one of the team at Welcome Churches. Tell us about your vision in your church, in your context. What do you feel God's told you to do? And let's have a conversation. Let's dream together about what we can do. And let's pray together about what God might be placing in your heart for your church, but also for the refugees in your local area. And what can we together do that can make an impact in that area, both in the community, but also in your church? Let's explore different ways in which Welcome Churches can help to equip, resource and assist you in your ministry at this point in time. And as I said earlier, we've got a good range of resources we can already offer, but maybe there's something we haven't thought of that you have. Talk to us. Let's do something new together that could not just help you in your context, but maybe lots of other churches across the UK as well.
Yes, that's a good message. Yeah. So now you feel God has prepared you for this journey since you were 18. And in between, you have done so many things, and God connected you to so many people, to so many churches, to so many nations. So what inspires you? What sustains you? What gives you joy, despite, of course, challenges, as we mentioned already?
Yeah, thank you. I think experiences that I've had, as I mentioned earlier, being a stranger myself in foreign countries. And I find, again, when I read my Bible, Deuteronomy 10, refers to the fact that we were all once strangers. And I think I feel that in myself, that, I know what it's like a little bit to feel like the stranger and to then be welcomed in and to experience the unconditional love of God in a faith community and part of a church. So my personal faith is really important to me. My relationship with my Heavenly Father, who has called me to follow him, has welcomed me, but also has adopted me. I'm an adopted son of the living God, and that's incredible. I want to see more people become sons and daughters of the living God. I want to see more people experience the incredible warmth and love in a community that he always intended his creatures to be part of. And I'd love to see that expanded out within our churches and for people to be part of that. But that's what inspires me, because it's also something that levels us all out. We're all brothers and sisters in the same family. We're all equal. And none of us has any natural born right to be part of this family of believers. It's by God's amazing grace and through the sacrifice of Jesus that we're all adopted and can become part of this royal family. I find it inspiring, and it sustains me when I see the UK church demonstrating that concept in practice, welcoming newcomers with open arms, maybe inviting in strangers, embracing them as friends and integrating them as a community. The church isn't meant to be just for existing believers. It's not just meant to be for those who are members. It's meant to be for those in the surrounding areas and neighbourhoods who don't yet know God. And I love seeing it when those people are coming in and finding their own welcome. And that, of course, includes the refugees. So, yeah, that's inspiring for me. I find that keeps me going. We want to see more of that. We want to see more people coming in, more people feeling included and finding their place in a loving community, serving a loving God.
Amen to that. This is really what also all of us would like to see, people being welcome and understanding this biblical perception of welcome. Of course, we see this through the welcoming of God to us. When God welcomes us with open arms, and we are part of this family of this holy nation now because of what God has done through Jesus. And this is just a reflection of that work that God has done to be able to extend it to other people as well. And as you mentioned, reading your Bible and reflecting on your personal testimony, your personal relationship with God, is there any Bible verse or passage that is particularly meaningful to you in this season of leadership as well and being yourself involved in this work?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a big fan of a lot of verses in Isaiah, but also the Psalms. And Psalm 68 in particular, between verses 5 and 10, really speaks to me. Verse 5 says, "A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling." That's beautiful. Verse 6, God sets the lonely or the solitary in families. He leads out prisoners with singing. just beautiful to see your people settled in, and from your bounty, God, you provide for the poor. That is a brilliant, beautiful vision, and something that I just love to read about God's heart for the poor, and that being settled in, that just speaks straight into the ministry of Welcome Churches straight away. I think also a very special verse for me in Acts 17, sort of verses 24 down to 27, but in particular, just interested to see in God's purposes in the Bible and how that relates to our particular context. It says in verse 26, and he, that's God, marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him. I find that really special, thinking about God's purposes, what God's doing, and how we see that reflected in the movement of people across our world. And we can play a part in that. And it's God's master plan for salvation and for reaching the nations. And we can play our part in that. Very exciting.
Thank you, James. And this is also our prayer, that people being sent by God to our local communities, our local churches, we would also see them being settled in their new life among us. So as we come to the last part of this conversation now, so what one thing that you love, you want to see every church in the UK to understand about welcoming refugees and those seeking asylum, and in other words, welcoming the stranger?
Yeah, I think it comes back down to the fact that, when we bless others, we become a blessing to them, but we also have the opportunity to be blessed ourselves. I think that's so important. And, being blessed by a different culture is even greater. And I think as the UK church blesses those from different cultures in our own neighbourhoods, there is no doubt in my mind the UK churches will be blessed themselves. In giving, we will always receive. God is a God who gives abundantly above all we can ask or imagine. And we, as the UK church, have so much to learn from the strength, the resilience, the generous hospitality and the warmth from those communities that God has brought to our shores. And we, as the UK church, can learn so much from them that can change us and make us closer to the biblical model of what church should be than we already are. There's a lot there to be discovered and a lot there to be learned by showing the welcome to others.
Exactly, yeah. So this is very encouraging. When we welcome people, we welcome them and empower them for some time, but people are not receivers all the time. There will be time when they also give themselves. And we have seen this time and time again, that people also have talent and gift that they can play a role in the mission of the church in the UK and what God is doing here as well. So as we come, to the end of this conversation now, so is there any message you would like to share with our listeners right now?
I think just a real plea to all of us and to myself as well is to go and seek out opportunities, to build relationships, to go and speak to someone who's from a different culture to you, to reach out to someone who's had a different experience of life to you, and be prepared to learn. We need to be good listeners. We need to listen to stories. We need to listen to context, because that will aid our understanding of what people have gone through. Because if we don't have that personal contact and we don't have those individual stories of people we've met personally, all we're left with is what the newspapers and the news channels tell us. And it's so easy to then fall into the trap of stereotyping and misunderstanding what's really going on. But find out those real stories and let them change you. That's the thing I'd like to leave you with.
That's really good, James. Yeah, thank you so much. This is very encouraging. And people have beautiful testimonies and stories. So when you know the journey people have taken, you understand more. And part of it is, of course, to get to know people, listen to them. That's why we say always, don't just talk about refugees, but talk with refugees. And that's very helpful. James, It has been really wonderful to listen to you and to learn more about you, about your role, about your heart. Thank you so much for sharing your heart today and your vision and the testimonies you just shared about, meeting refugees, supporting, being in other nations. It's been really encouraging. And just to those who are listening to us, I encourage you to reflect on today's conversation with James and consider how you can get involved. Every act of welcome matters. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this movement of welcoming the stranger. Until next time, take care. Thank you for listening to the Love the Stranger podcast, brought to you by Welcome Churches. To learn more about our work or to make a donation, visit welcomechurches.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, review, share, and distribute to help us spread the word.